Hi everyone, welcome to the Moxi Show. I'm Evelyn, founder of Moxi, which is an app that empowers freelancers to get paid for their work and also manage their financial wellness, all in one easy to use place. So check it out and download it at wehavemoxi.com. So this is our very first episode of the Moxi Show, where we share insights into freelancer life, everything from managing clients to finances and showcasing really cool and amazing talent. Today's guest is Jake Poinier, founder and owner of Boomvang Creative Group. He provides writing, editing and consulting services to many Fortune 500 companies and also independent authors. Welcome, Jake. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. So with many years in the publishing industry, you've spent time on both sides of the career fence, both as an employee and as a freelancer. Why did you choose to become a freelancer and what made you come to that decision?
So in the late 1990s, I was working at a custom publishing company, so a company that produces magazines for various business organizations, entities, things like that. And at that company, I worked with a lot of freelancers, and I'd worked with freelancers for the previous decade too, all the way along. And I got to the point, it was a family-owned company, and I kind of realized that I was not going to get any further in the company. And at the same time, I knew a lot of freelancers that were doing pretty well. I knew at the time what I was paying freelancers, which at various publications had always been somewhere around $1 a word, which sounds horrible now because a lot of people pay a lot less than $1 a word, and this is 20 some odd years later. But I just looked at it and I saw a bunch of freelancers who were doing well and thought, why not me? I'd grown up with a self-employed dad, so I always kind of, thought that was kind of in my genes, just a little bit, defiant and sometimes not much for authority. So basically now I've got I've got a couple dozen bosses, and it all kind of de-escalates everything, knowing that I'm responsible one-to-one to all these different people as opposed to having one boss who controls my destiny. So I basically just took the leap, and I'd saved some money in advance, hoping that it wouldn't, that I wouldn't have to dip into it. And I actually had a pretty good first 2 years, but then the dot-com boom and bust happened, and so my second, third year were kind of a struggle because everybody's marketing budgets dried up. But I gutted it out, and I knew I didn't want to go back to an office. I did like the freedom of being a freelancer. I liked the freedom of doing things with people that I chose to work with. When I worked in my previous company, I didn't have any choice. If there was a client that I didn't like or that was always causing problems or whatever, it didn't matter because they were bringing $100,000 a year into the company, and I didn't get a vote. That was the owner of the company got the vote on whether they were a client or not. Now I get to choose who I work with, and I can resoundingly say I pretty much love all my clients, and I've had a lot of them for 10 years or more.
So did you ever have to deal with any challenging clients that were really difficult to work with, or that you had to chase up getting paid for?
Yeah, so I'm big on referrals. I think that every freelancer needs to strive at some level to have a referral-based business, because it's just so much less work than always having to try to hustle and find things and whatever. So got a referral from a good client, somebody that I worked with for a long time, and they kind of gave me a heads up that this person might be a little bit challenging, but just as long as you do this, and this, you're going to be fine. It wasn't fine at all. This person, well, the analogy that I always use is if you've ever taken a life-saving course back when you were a kid, wanted to be a lifeguard or whatever, and the first thing that they teach you is if you're trying to rescue somebody and they start to drown you, get the heck away from them. So that's kind of always been my operating principle, where it's like, if somebody starts to drown me, I'm pretty quick to get away. So it became pretty obvious early that this wasn't going to work out. she, she said that she liked my first draft of copy that I did for her homepage, but yet there was nothing that, like, when you looked at it at a granular level, there was nothing that she actually did like. She preferred all of her original own stuff. And that's one thing I can't compete with. And it happens a lot with specific professions. And I'm going to call out physicians. Like, a lot of physicians think that they are good writers. And if a physician has written a website or written a brochure and you try to make it better, you're probably going to get pushback. And this person didn't happen to be a physician, but it was the same sort of thing where she pushed back on just about everything. And I said, hey, you know what? I think you'd be better served by finding somebody that matches up better with you, philosophically and with what you want to achieve. And she still wanted to stay with me. She's like, no, you misunderstood. It's like, well, no, actually I understood pretty well. So yeah, to answer your original question, yes, that happens. And to me, the earlier you can figure it out, the better off you're going to be. Like, you don't want to get several weeks into a project and be constantly at loggerheads with somebody that simply has expectations that you can't hit. And, it's like, I've got clients that I don't even ever have to do revisions, where it's like, yep, perfect, check, done, signed off. And there are others that maybe we get into version 5 or 6 if there are things that they want to add, or things that's like, okay, this needs to be bulked up and this needs to be trimmed down. That's cool. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But if you detect that somebody is going to be impossible to satisfy, you need to identify that quickly and sever the relationship as quickly as possible.
So one of the things that we see that worries many is that when you become a freelancer, you essentially means becoming your own business. So what was the experience like for you?
My advice is always that you need to think of yourself as a business first. And kind of my basic philosophy is that I happen to have a skill for writing and editing. Like, that's the way my brain is wired. But I actually prefer the business aspect of freelancing. The writing and editing kind of takes care of itself to a certain extent, whereas I really like the business of it, and specifically understanding somebody else's business issues that they're trying to solve. So, being client-centered and figuring out, even if it's not an interesting topic, even if it's not a company that's like, I would never buy their products, but, being able to help them deliver their message in a way that is clear. Same thing with authors. If you're working with somebody on their book, some of the books that I've worked on are not books that I personally would read, but it's my mission to make it a book that somebody who's interested in a given topic is going to want to purchase the book and to be able to benefit from it. So, I kind of look at, my role is a lot of consulting aspects, not just delivering content for them. And I think that's, having that mindset makes it a little bit easier to do things that maybe aren't that exciting. One of my great clients is involved in HVAC, heating and cooling systems. Not inherently an exciting topic, but it's a great company, great team, love them all. And so it's really fun to work with them, and I've learned a lot. And so, that the educational aspect of it, where it's like you're always trying to build on the things that you know about their topic, and so you become a valued resource. So that's really a business angle, as opposed to, can I put together really pretty words and come up with cool headlines and great calls to action. Those are kind of those are the basic building blocks, but it's the bigger business issues that really can help you make a difference with somebody.
Yep. So I think we can agree that being a freelancer comes with, tremendous benefits, but it also can be challenging and stressful, particularly for someone who's just starting out as a freelancer. What kind of advice would you give to that person, getting started in the publishing industry?
I mean, one of the big things for me is diversification, and that's a little bit hard when you're starting out. But it's very easy for people to think, okay, I've got a client and now I'm good, even if it's a big client. So, in the business, call them anchor clients. That's sometimes dangerous territory if all of your income is coming from one specific client. So I always think in terms of diversifying, and that means diversifying in different industries. It means diversifying in the number of clients that you have. It means diversifying even in the size of clients that you have. So you've got big companies, small companies, and you never know when a small company is going to do really well, and you get to follow along with them. Then also diversifying the skills that you are able to offer. So, I started out where I was mostly doing writing, and, it was for magazines and for, writing people's annual reports and marketing copy and stuff like that. That evolved, because I went in business for myself in 1999, quickly it became obvious that the place to be was websites. So I did a lot of that. And then over the course of time, doing, radio commercials or video scripts or things like that. So always kind of branching out in the things that you offer. The reason diversification is important is because you never know when something is going to take off, and you also don't know when something is going to go down. Like I had plenty of friends that did really well in freelancing in the real estate industry back in 04, 05. Made a lot of money. What happened in 07, 08? That became a problem. So they were able to make hay while the sun shined, but then all of a sudden it dried up. And so for me, I went through the downturn of 2001, went through the downturn of 08, 09, and even through this COVID stuff. Yes, I had one of my very good clients from last year completely dried up because all of their clients dried up. And, fortunately, because I was diversified, I had other clients that actually ramped up. So people that were, like an example would be technology, where when conferences got canceled, these companies wanted to pump out some white papers and some sales sheets, things like that. So it's like, when this client went down, these clients went up. Oddly enough, one of my clients that's doing pretty well right now is in real estate. And who would have called that? But here I am, and it's like they're probably going to do 50% more business with me this year than they did last year. And it's nothing that I did special. It just is, being in the right place at the right time. And again, being diversified so that you're not dependent on one client. Because the other thing is that you never know when a client's going to disappear and for what reason, and it's not going to be your fault. I mean, I've had a lot of, 5-figure clients leave over the course of time, and it's because of bankruptcy. It's because they hired somebody in-house. It's because the person that was my contact left, somebody else came in and brought in their own group of freelancers. So all of those things are at play, and none of them are things that you have control over. The only thing you have control over is how you have set things up. And I think I did business with maybe, 18 or 19 different clients last year. And there have been years when I've done, in the 20s, and sort of depend, some of those were only, $400 or $500 for a small thing. But, just having that number of different people that are in your network, that also expands your abilities to have referrals, because all of those people, if they're satisfied with your work, maybe they don't have anything for you, but they may know somebody that's got exactly the same issue, and they can say, hey, give so-and-so a call.
Yeah, I think also it's an interesting point, the diversity of skills and, the learning curve that comes around that. My own experience here, having left the corporate world to launch my startup, all these things that I had to learn that I never had to worry about before, like last week, learning Adobe After Effects, and then, figuring out lead generation. And also, everything from, being able to improve your presentation skills, and getting out there and self-promoting and, the Moxi show, for instance, there's a lot to, that you need to do to become almost your own boss.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned speaking. That's a really good one. Being able to, even if you don't like presenting on stage, doing webinars, things like that. I mean, if once you've got a little bit of a background and you start to have kind of a niche that that you have a little bit more expertise than other people, that's a really fun thing to do. And I did that with the Editorial Freelancers Association, and I've done a couple of different webinars and things like that for NAIWE as well. And it all started back. And this kind of goes back to the business point where I've always been really interested in pricing and estimating. Like that to me is a really fascinating aspect of freelancing. Like how to do those things, because it's very easy for people to just, pull a copy of the writer's market off the wall and go like, oh, okay, this is X cents a word, or, so many dollars per hour, or whatever. That's not the way the world works at all. And there's a lot more flexibility to it, and a lot more creativity and negotiation and things like that can go into it. So I was always fascinated by pricing, which is what led me to blogging, which is what led me to write my book, The Science, Art, and Voodoo of Freelance Pricing and Getting Paid. So it all kind of spun up, and that allowed me to get speaking engagements and do webinars. And so, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that planned, but the way that it worked out in retrospect, it's like, oh, okay, all these things happened for a reason. And it's more fun that way. Like literally, if all I did was take assignments all day long, like, okay, please write 500 words on this. Okay, please edit this document. Okay, please do this. That wouldn't be very fun. And it would seem to me sort of not that big of an upgrade from being in a corporate environment, I guess.
Yeah, that's so true. Being able to negotiate your rates and knowing your market worth, it's really important to know.
It's very complicated, and it's different for every client. And you hear people talk about value pricing and like understanding, like my simplest way of thinking of it is like, okay, whatever I'm doing, what's that client going to be able to turn that into? So, on the high end, the real estate client that I work with is also an attorney. My guess, she probably makes $350, $400 an hour, right? She doesn't want to write blog posts. That's not the best value for her time. So even at my highest level of pricing, I'm a bargain to her, relatively speaking, because I'm helping her get speaking engagements. I'm helping her business. And so I'm delivering a lot of value that really can have a price tag on it. On the other end, I mean, if you're working with a startup that has a small budget, that's going to be more challenging. And, you can't go into that circumstance expecting that you're going to get the highest price probably, unless somehow they've been angel funded, beyond their wildest dreams or whatever. And that, that'll happen. But, so that's another circumstance. Then you think about, okay, this is a nonprofit that I feel very strongly about. Like it means something personally to me to be able to help these people. And so those people might be on the lower end of the pricing scale. If I know, if I can, feel good about it, and I know that I'm helping an organization that I personally feel strongly about, and I get some cool stuff in my portfolio, all those things go into the equation. So it's just really, I think it's kind of goes back to when you look at the writer's market or you look at these rate charts and all that, it's like that's a good starting point. But an understanding of the market and what's available out there. Here's one. I was like totally stunned. A person I had done some small stuff with at a small company ended up moving to a big company. And when it came time to invoice, she said, "Oh, make sure you do it at $2 a word." I mean, it was like, what? I mean, it was like easy peasy, like PR type stuff. I mean, it was not was like, okay. So, I mean, I honestly, if I had just estimated that for her without her prompting me, I would have gone lower than $2 a word, just because it's like, oh, this is really easy. This is the value to them, and that's what they paid freelancers. So it's like, don't give away the game before you understand what the playing field is.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, especially from a financial standpoint. So, Jake, we met through the National Association of Independent Writers and Editors. How did you get involved there, and what kind of benefits do these associations bring in the life of a freelancer? For instance, around networking, support, or mentorship?
All of the above. Support, mentorship, opportunities to grow yourself, and like I was talking about with webinars, speaking engagements, all those types of things. So with NAIWE, that I want to say that I met April Michelle through the editorial Freelancers, maybe at one of the conferences way back when. No, it was Communication Central. So I was in Rochester, New York. I think they might be doing it in Baltimore this year. They moved that around. But so I just met her at a conference and kind of struck up a friendship. And she contacted me, I guess, a little bit more than a year ago, just asking if I wanted to be on the board of experts. And I said yes. Again, something where it's like I feel like I'm far enough along in my career that I like giving back and I like mentoring. I work with another mentoring group. And I feel like I'm at that point in my career that if there are any nuggets of wisdom that I can share that might help somebody, I would like to participate in that. And that's kind of what NAIWE is about in general, where it's, everything from people who are starting out all the way up to people that have been at it for longer than me. I mean, there are people that have been at it, I think 30 years or something like that, maybe more. What I like about associations is that you can really find your own niche within them, where you find a couple buddies, you find some friends, you find some people that have, sort of common businesses, or, that are good, good resources, things like that. It ultimately comes down to what you put into it. So, if you're not active on their Facebook page or on their Google groups or whatever, you're probably not going to get a ton out of it if you don't go to the conventions or things like that, if you don't take their webinars or, participate at that level. So it really comes down to what you put into it as far as associations. But for me, it ultimately comes down to, people talk about how freelancing is lonely, and I don't find that at all. I mean, yes, I mean, you could make it lonely if that was, kind of how you wanted to do it, but that to me wouldn't be much fun. I like having people that's like, we've talked extensively on Facebook or whatever, and then you meet them at a convention, and it's just a really cool thing to kind of put all those things together. And over the course of years, I've met a lot of really good friends and people and peers that I respect. People that, if I've got questions that's like, geez, how would you deal with this? Just having somebody that you can, talk through something is really helpful, as opposed to thinking that you're going on, all on yourself. And that's, that I think is a mistake that some freelancers make, where you are the solo knight in shining armor, and it's like, okay, but it'd be better if you had a group of people on horseback behind you or on your sides. So for me, that's kind of where associations come in, where it's just it adds a little bit more personal flavor to things, and more resources that people could depend on. I will say that the downside to that is people who come into associations thinking that this is going to be a wellspring of work for them. And I know that there are people that do benefit from job lists or do, but that can't be your only marketing tactic. Like, joining an association is not the equivalent of going out and hustling for work. So I think people need to be aware of what the limitations are, just because, and I don't think associations promise that. Like, I don't think that I've ever seen an association promise, join our association and you're going to have more work than you know what to do with. They've never promised that, but I think people read into it where like, oh, look, I'm networking. And it's like, okay, but you're also networking with people that are kind of in competition with you at some level. So don't expect that, if a really juicy job comes onto the board, that you're not going to be one of 40 people who are jumping in trying to get it.
Yeah, so it's interesting, this talk around, working remotely, especially during these times where, this becomes the default way of working. So, for those that have had to make the move from full-time to freelance, or suddenly they're facing themselves working remotely, perhaps, joining these associations is actually a good first step.
Yeah, it's a great way to ramp up your learning curve, because guaranteed any questions that you have probably are answered somewhere by somebody. Like, nothing is happening to you that's unique, maybe within reason, but it's like, so with the disaster story that I shared a couple of minutes ago, as far as the referral that turned out to be a disaster, I just posted something funny on Facebook about it, and like 60 or 80 different people chimed in saying, oh, I hate when that happens. Oh yeah, that happened to me last week. So kind of, I wasn't looking for commiseration. I mostly was scolding myself for having overlooked being stupid. But to hear people say, yeah, that happens to all of us, it kind of helps, doesn't make you feel like dumb, I guess, but just, the old misery loves company.
Yeah, I think it's so true though. People are really, it does seem to be that people are changing in the way they're sharing. It's a lot more authentic. It's about, people talking about the struggles and the challenges around, what the world's facing, or what we're all facing today.
With COVID, like you said, it kind of changed the dynamic a little bit, as far as, just how people, try to get business. And, certainly it's made it a lot more difficult. Certainly it's difficult to know, people have been hurt budget-wise, health-wise, all of these sort of unintended consequences. So you sort of need to be a little bit more, I don't know if empathetic's the right word or whatever, but, business is never kind and gentle, but this is a time where it's like, yeah, people are going through stuff, and being respectful of that kind of, I think it's a good reminder. And, hopefully within the next couple of months, we can go back to our old rough and tumble, bare knuckle.
So as someone who's also hired freelancers, are there any tips that you have for freelancers that are looking for work at companies, in terms of interviewing or obtaining these jobs? The statistics now is saying that, there's an increase in companies that prefer to hire freelancers rather than full-time employees.
Looking at it from the both sides of the desk aspect, when I was hiring freelancers, and in fact, when I hire freelancers now, and usually when I'm hiring somebody, it's for graphic design or for, web design, those types of things. Freelancers underestimate how important it is to be easy to work with. And skill is not just about the words that you put on the page, or your ability to clean up somebody else's words on a page. It's about whether somebody enjoys working with you. I know that's a hard thing to define, and we all have different personalities and whatnot. But for my example that I always use is, I would rather have a freelancer who is a B or a B plus writer, or B or B plus designer, who's super easy to work with, super responsive, here's what I asked for and delivers what I asked for, all that stuff, than somebody who is an A plus creative and a pain in the neck. And, you know, when I first joined my last corporate job, I had this list of, I don't know, 20 freelancers that my old, you know, the former person in the position who had moved up in the company. So he had this list of 20 people. He's like, oh, I totally recommend all of these people. They're all great, blah, blah, blah. Within the first issue, I dumped about half of them because I didn't get along with them. They were just high maintenance, totally caused me problems, and I did not care how good they were at writing. In the course of time, I started to work my own freelancers that I worked with in the past that I knew that I could count on, that I knew that you know, they were going to deliver it on time. They weren't going to, you know, ask a bunch of questions. They weren't going to ask for an extension at the last minute. All those things. So I've always tried to operate under that principle of being super low maintenance, the person who can just get stuff done. Yes, if somebody's doing something awful to you, it's within your rights to push back on it. But for the most part, the more you can do to be the person that somebody wants to work with, that's going to benefit your business. So that's my philosophy of the other side of the desk in a nutshell.
Jake, thanks so much for your time today. I think it's been a really helpful conversation for aspiring and current freelancers, not just in the publishing industry, but generally. You know, there was a lot of really great tips and advice there. So thank you. So I encourage anyone that wants to learn more about Jake and his consulting and editing skills to check out the link that we provided, and also have a look at the National Association of Independent Writers and Editors. They've got some amazing resources on their site, and you can reach out to them. So thank you very much for listening to our very first Moxi show. Next, we've got a whole load of exciting stuff lined up, so tune in next time, and thank you guys.